Welcome everyone to this webinar by Cristiano on stopping the tool avalanche, which is happening today for the next 1 hour. And Cristiano is a solution architect and testing advocate at X-Ray by Xblend, and we're doing this in collaboration with BrowserStack, who are our premier sponsor for all our conferences, exclusive sponsor for all our community events. So it's due to companies like BrowserStack we are able to do such events consistently at scale. So yeah. Let's welcome the speakers. Cristiano is deeply passionate about testing, automation, performance, and optimizing daily processes. He's got a very interesting topic today, stopping tool avalanche, and which we believe, considering the number of tools coming into the market, it's an important topic, and we believe this can add value to your testing knowledge. So with that, let me call Cristiano on stage. Hey, Cristiano, you're on stage everyone. Now.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to come back.
Yeah, Cristiano is a strong advocate of TestTribe. He keeps coming back here. He keeps sharing his knowledge, right from performance testing to tools. So, well, always a pleasure to host you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, if you can share your screen, Cristiano, should I add your screen here? If you can share your screen.
Let me see. Yeah. Sharing. Here we go.
Yeah, it's visible now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm here to present this topic about stopping the tool avalanche. And there's, we all know, is a subject that will touch us in either way in our journey, professional journey for sure, because, well, if we change anything, new tools will arise for sure. But thank you for introducing me. I'm always adding this slide to introducing me because it has a poem, let's say, of an introduction that was done by Nikolai Volokin with the help of AI. And I really liked it, so I just put it here. But in a nutshell, I'm a solution architect at X-Ray. I always been part of testing. Well, always, not always. I started as a developer, and that will reveal my age, but I started as a Symbian developer, so I still honed those old phones that were not smartphones for sure, and I developed for it. But I quickly changed or evolved into testing, and since then, I always loved automation, test automation, but I fall in love also by the entire process of delivery. And I experiment performance testing and I experiment infrastructure. And now I'm back as a solution advocate for X-Ray. But all of this gave me some baggage and some experience that I will share a little bit of that with you today. But before just starting, I want to take this opportunity to say that there is more to quality than just tests. And sometimes when we talk quality, we're just talking about tests. I'm hearing, well, should I do automation? Should I do manual testing? Should I adopt exploratory testing? But in this fast-paced world where the applications are no longer isolated applications that are just there, they are part of a complex socio-technical system that usually is composed by tools, software, and how people interact with it. And also, the tester role has evolved. Testers are not more the gatekeepers that are just there to stop the release because something has happened. And of course, we have more weapons than just tests. So I'm here to say that, and this is why I wanted to frame my presentation, is quality is not just about tests. It has a lot of other streams that you need to be aware of in order to raise quality, even if indirectly in your processes. But let me just give you a bit of context of a bit of the story that originated this presentation. So in my previous company, we started small, but of course, we had some success, so we started growing. This growth has brought some difficulties. First of all, as a small company, we had like two monoliths, one backend, one front end, complicated applications, hard to install, a lot of manual steps to maintain those. But as we start having more and more clients, we needed to have more and more teams to cope with the code that we needed to do. And this has made the emerging a new necessity that was, well, we need to break these two monoliths. We are unable to install those and do development that is more agile into it. So, well, we decided let's break it down into microservices. And this is almost 5 years ago, and we only managed to do that on the front end. The back end is still not microservices adjusted. So we did this, and when we do this, we will need new tools. We will need new frameworks. We start adopting Docker and Dockerize our services. But this increased the complexity of the product. And the tester has now to have a more holistic view of how things are working, and also to understand if my services is working correctly, how is it working in this web of microservices. And of course, when we started to talk about all of those things, it was time of adopting DevOps because we were having more and more difficulties between the development teams and the operations team. What was happening is that the development team was just developing new microservices using different tools for testing, different tools for developing frameworks that was cutting edge frameworks, but really, really in beta stage sometimes. And then just dropping binary to the DevOps engineer. I don't like calling it DevOps team, by the way, but I'm going to start calling infrastructure engineer. DevOps is not a team, it's a concept. So another useful information here. So let me just resume this. And when the developers started to deliver binaries with new frameworks, with new tools that needs to be deployed and maintained by the infrastructure team, they start saying no. They start saying, I don't have the knowledge. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what are the security principles. I'm not sure if it's going to follow the login standards that we have. So it starts to raise a lot of problems, and the quality has decreased because of it. And it has slowed down our processes. And it has installed a big confusion. And we needed to start looking at how we can cope with it. And actually, it really doesn't matter where you are in your journey, because you can be in different stages of your journey. And we shaped all of those. We were adopting Agile. We shaped into DevOps. We were trying to build an automation framework that was centralized and reused by all of the teams. But all of these decisions come with a caveat that is, you need tools to support that change. You need tools to support the change of framework. You need a new tool to support the change of flow, of process. And if you want to have security, you need to have security validations, security tools, security engineers. So all of those changes that you have and all of the decisions you have on your delivery pipeline are probably tied to a necessity to have a tool. And this creates a problem because every time you add a tool within your process, it will make you, first of all, it's another breaking point, another failure point that you are adding onto your process. And integrating all of these tools into one big process is cumbersome, not always possible to automate. Sometimes the manual steps are just stuck into the head of a certain people that are not sharing. So a lot of issues appear here. And just to reinstate the problem, this irresponsible adoption of tools is actually slowing down your delivery. And by doing so, you are also impacting the quality of your product. And I start feeling those impacts in four big areas that that I want to share with you here. The four big areas or the four big impacts that I felt the most when I was just adopting all of that were I divided into knowledge, integration, maintenance, and standards. These are for me the big pain points or big impacts I felt by that avalanche of tools coming in. So let's dive in each one of those. Regarding knowledge, what was happening with that avalanche of tools? First of all, the installation and maintenance of all of those tools were a nightmare. It's hard to share the knowledge. It's hard to have an infrastructure team that knows deeply how to install, how to maintain, how to cope with errors for all of the tools that you need to go into your production system. It reveals also the lacks of experience of the persons that need to maintain that. Often is not just having a file that is just describing how to install it, but you need to have experience with it. You need to look at the logs and understanding, well, if this is happening, by my experience, I think this could be this and this. So the experience here was not there because infrastructure was just receiving things too late in the game. Visibility, that's another thing. We end up having teams, and taking testers by example, we're having different teams of testers, so testers within teams, they were involved or directly as an agile team, using different frameworks to do the same thing. And that for testing is a nightmare because you start having a lot of different results. You need to have a lot of manual gathering of results, making sense of all of that. And here comes the Excels of this life where you just put everything there and you do a graphic of that. And it's another thing that is a problem. And having those Excels everywhere, it just brings the problem of scattered information. When we have information in files, it's one step above, but some of the times what happens, at least for deployment processes, and we felt it, was the team described how to deploy that specific tool to the infrastructure team to have that information. But there are some manual steps that they forgot to put up there. So the deployment of an infrastructure engineer was never working as well as the deployment of development team. So all of that is just a set of issues that is just piling up and making harder to work. One of the biggest problems, or one of the biggest issues that we start to felt is also regarding integration. And in here, integration should be the key of having a lot of tools, but you need to define what is this integration. And sometimes the definition of what is a system or what is a tool that will integrate with another one is too broad and has different meanings for different persons. So if I talk to someone that has zero automation experience and wants to integrate something into our workflow, having two manual steps every time that you need to use it, for that person may be okay. But for me, that I want a fully automatic pipeline to just output the results at the end or a binary, it's not okay. So having too much manual steps to make the integration work was not working for us because we needed to have a full-blown automated pipeline where we just input code and output either a binary or the failure. And then the second problem emerges here also is, well, this doesn't fully integrate with what we have, But if we build a custom integration code to link both, it will make it work. And that's troublesome. I will advise you, if you're going that route, do everything that you can to prevent it. Don't use custom code to integrate. And sometimes it's just, well, we have here a possible integration that is maintained by an external team and has versions and the community is supporting it. But, well, like everything, my company is really special. So I have special needs that are not mirrored on that piece of code. So I take that piece of code that works like, I don't know, for 80% of what I need. And those 20%, I just customize it. That means that now I have a new branch of that code that I need to maintain. And every time the original code has an update, as a correction, a security correction, I need to generate another. I need to validate if my custom code works. I need to generate a new version of it just because of it. So and I end up to have one team to be dedicated to that custom code. So ask yourself, is it worth it, or is it worth it to adjust a little bit the process, but having the support of a broader community? And my favorite is, well, I really need this tool that will give me everything, but to integrate it in my process, I will need the other tool that will do the integration of these tools. And this is a little bit troublesome. So instead of integrating one tool, we want to integrate two. So 2 points of failures more in our process. I'm really not keen of it. So ask yourself, why do you need the tool? What is it bringing to the process? And more of everything, make sure that you start considering that tool that is available or that is able to integrate into your process. Maintenance. I already talked a little bit about maintenance on the other slides, but I just want to emphasize this one because at this time I was already shifting into an infrastructure team. I start feeling really, really hard the maintenance burdens of having an avalanche of tools. First of all, more failures points in your process. I cannot stop saying that you need to question those new tools very thoughtfully and making sure that they are helpful to the objective that you want to achieve, and that they are fully integrated in your other tools and in your process that you have defined. Don't let your process be defined by the tools. Use tools to define your process. And of course, the production support nightmare. The solution I'm going to show here will be focused in stopping the nightmare of production, because all of the rest, we turn back to development teams that say, if you don't aim to have that in production, you can play around whatever you want. If you want to someday that will reach production and be maintained there and will be updated there, you will need to follow the process I'm going to talk a little bit. So we need to prevent this. We need to help infrastructure teams to have a stable production environment. And to do so, we need to align with them. We need to know what they support, what are the tools and frameworks they already support, and have knowledge on what are the standards of the company regarding security, compliance, logging, metrics, observability, that those tools need to comply with in order to be installed into production. Customization is another nightmare because usually customization doesn't have a final version that is supported by everyone because it's a custom code that we are just done. Often not tested because, well, it's just a small change. So why do we need to test a small change? It's fairly safe. No, it's not. Don't assume anything. Assumption is our biggest enemy here. And customization is the second one, for at least having the ability to maintain things in production. That takes me to no official versions. It's okay to play with the beta version of a framework, and it's fine to experiment and having that feel of the new toy that I'm just playing around and it's doing wonderful things. But if it doesn't have an official released version supported by whoever is producing it, it will not be installed in production. That's like rule number one. If you don't have an official version, it will not go to production. Betas, alphas, no, nothing will reach production. And of course, license management. That's it's so hard, that one, because when you have a lot of tools installed into production, they have a lot of versions, and probably some of those are paid. That means that they have a license that will terminate in a certain day or a certain time. So first of all, you need to know everything that's in production. You need to know all of the end licenses agreements that you have there, because you need to start buying those in time to have a proper installation of the new licenses. And you need also to be sure that more than just renewals, you don't have any, I don't know, security patch that is mandatory for any of the tools. And when those tools are integrated into process, any of those changes of versions will need to be validated. You need to make sure that there are no breaking changes, that all of your workflow, all of your code work with this new version. So too much tools will create too much chaos. That takes me to the other point, standards. And sometimes, and in most of the companies, the ones that are, well, starting just now, probably didn't have this conversation. But what are the company standards that you have in your company? If you don't know this answer, start digging around. Start understanding, what does that mean? For us, it started to be, because we started to be microservices, so a lot of APIs out there. It started to be a standardization on the error message. We don't want to be too creative around error messages. We need to be able to use whatever API we are having on our company and be able to understand the error messages that are coming up with enough information for you to be autonomous using them, but not too much information that will help attackers taking advantage of your system. Logging is another troublesome or cumbersome problem, because we want it to be multi-region. So we have application installed in two different data centers that were in two different regions, one America, one Europe, for instance. And the application was just deployed there and the logging was registered there, but we needed a way to have an overview of all that's happening on the application broadly. So we had a centralized logging system that all of the applications that were installed into production need to produce and push into that central logging system. That means that they need to integrate with that system. They need to produce logging messages that are compliant with that system, and they need to produce the right logging. Do not pollute the central logging with stack trace information or info information or log or just debugging information. So make sure that the standard of logging is also well defined. And then we come to the one that gives us a lot of work, that is performance. What is the performance required for an API, for an application that you expect to have to insert that application into the workflow of your product? So imagine that you have a login experience on your site, and that login actually is I don't know, checking the API key somewhere. And for some reason, that operation is taking a lot of time and delaying all of the pending workflows below. That will not work. So that will need to be flagged before reaching production. And for that, you need to understand what are the standards, what are at this time, what is the minimum request per second that API can handle. And does it match what we expect on our system, or what is the minimum time a page needs to take to load in order to be ready to go to production. And of course, we don't have performance without security or security without performance, but security, we start late at this game of security. And anyone that has started that knows exactly that when you start late at security, the first analysis that you do will explode into the number of issues found. And then you just have to go and see what are false positives, false negatives, see if they are being just exaggerated. So you need to adjust the analysis, you need to adjust the rules, you need to make it work for you. And then once you have all of that done, you need to make the team be aware that every time a security issue of level X is found, you have X amount of time to solve it. So you need to have a buffer in your development to cope with all of those security issues that may appear. Because security is not an afterthought. It's something that can really impact not only your clients, but also the image of your company. So all of that were issues, and we wanted to have, or we started to feel that we needed a process, a system of adoption of tools to prevent all of that. And the system needed to be accessible by everyone, needed to be able to define what it means to adopt a new tool in our company. What do you need to do? What anyone that wants a new tool or new framework need to do to adopt it? And we came across this Zalando Tech Radar that is open source. You guys can search it out. And this is the look of it. As you can see, the technology radar does one thing really good. That is, it shows in a glimpse of an eye, you can directly see what are all of the tools that you have on your company, what is the status of them, because we define different levels that I'm going to speak in a little bit. And we define this way of visualizing it divided by areas. So it will enhance the search. It will separate also the evolution of each one of the tools, and it will increase visibility. So these are the areas where you can have all of the tools related to data stores, all of the tools for infrastructure, and this is just an example. You can group that into categories or areas that make more sense to your company and to your team. And let's talk a little bit about the levels. In here, we see in the center the in-use ones. That means that all of the tools that are here in the in-use ring means that we have confidence on that tool and it's widely used in the company and adopted. So it's okay to use. The trial ones are the ones that some engineers already assessed, and they are taking that a step further. So they are experimenting. They are doing a trial. So we know that some teams are using this tool in order to evaluate if that tool can comply with all of the steps that we have defined to be adopted. So we know that these tools are at the moment being experimented by someone in the company. The assess ones are the ones that some teams are brought up and said, well, this will be really, really useful for us for this specific use case. And we need to start the process of assessing if it makes sense. And during this session, we will see first, where does it fit on the areas? Do you have another tool that solves the same problem? So if you have, please use the one that you already, if it's already approved, use that one. If not, and it's really a new necessity, we need to start assessing, seeing if it has the ability to comply with all of the process of adoption, and eventually give it a trial, and then see if it will comply with everything that we have defined. And we have also the ones that are on the outer ring that are annulled. That means that are not recommended to be used and not worth investing into. So if someone comes and say, well, I want to try this, then we look at the ring and it's already on the old stage, we'll say, well, we already did that path and that tool does not comply with the adoption of tools in our company, so we are not going to adopt it. And that gives you a really powerful visual image of how is the panorama of tools in your company. This technology radar also brings two different sets of information. The default page will explain what is a technology radar, what are those rings out there, and what do they mean. That it's really, really important information. It will define what is the purpose of it, because sometimes, and I remember newcomers on the company that didn't even know what the technology radar is. And by the way, putting this in the onboarding process, if you adopt this one day, of course, you need to put this on the onboarding of everyone in the company. At least having the notion that this exists, and also how to maintain it. I'm going to touch base a little bit on this because we cannot have everyone in the company be responsible of maintaining it. We need to choose a subset of engineers that will look after it, that will publish new version of it, that will gather around into a month recurring meeting where we discuss all of the advances between the rings of new things. So this looks very, very good, but what does it mean to implement that in our process that was a little bit chaotic? First of all, we want to infuse our standards. That looks like a really good way of doing so. Then we also had to find champions, and those are those guys that will be responsible. Well, we need to have experienced people and people that already have some knowledge of the product, and people that we're going to go in a little bit of more detail. What are these champions? And they may differ from team or organization from organization, but the important thing is you need to have a group of persons that will gather the tech radar. They are not the sole responsible, but they will be the owners of it. And while you are implementing it, give it a monthly spotlight, meaning that don't let it die. Because one thing that is worse of not having information is having the wrong information. So if it's not updated, if the tools there are not changing rings, if the new tools are not emerging there, if the process is not followed, we need to have a way. And our way was we wanted to implement at least a monthly spotlight where we make sure that at least we review the radar altogether. And visibility. So we wanted to have the radar, but available for everyone. And that information will be enough for everyone in the team. At least we thought so. So what we did to infuse standards? This, first of all, if you are going this route, it was a great opportunity to discover and to align what are our company standards. Because sometimes we don't think about it straight away. But when you have the necessity to say, well, I have here a new tool, what are the standards or what are the process you want to implement to check if the standards are aligned with what the company expects? And the standards is really a broad word, but it's intended that way for you to adjust to what the standards of your company are. And it can be security standards, performance standards, logging standards, whatever you feel that your company needs in order to adopt a new tool. And make sure that those standards are part of the process, meaning that if you define this adoption process, you need to have steps that it's not check if it matches the standards, but you need to create into the process automatic ways of validating that. And when I say automatic, is not a script that you run. Is for us, for example, one of the examples is the new language must send logs to the central logging system. So we want to see, or we want in the trial phase, we want to those teams to take that tool and make sure that that tool sends log to the central logging system. And that means obeying to the format, sending it to the central logging system, and we see the logs there. So that's a way to infuse the standards in the process. Then, of course, maintain that documentation alive. So create documentation to support the process of adoption. Make it clear for everyone. Because the important is everyone, or at least one person in each team needs to know first that we have the technology radar, and second, where do I find more information about it? If you have those two and you have the correct documentation there, it will be halfway done. And of course, for us, cover security, performance, and compliance, because we have a lot of compliance necessities. So some examples of how we do this, because it seems really generic, but it's intended to, because you need to question what you need and then come to the specifics and convert that into what means the most for your company. For us, it was new languages that needs to send logs to the central log system. So on the trial phase, all of those trials need to prove that they are able to do so. For the testing area, we wanted all of the testing tools to integrate with Jenkins. So they need to be, English is not my first language. So the testing tools need to be able to integrate with Jenkins. So they need to be executed in Jenkins easily and automatically, and they need to produce JUnit results because of the reporting system that we have that consumes JUnit results. So this is at least two of those necessities. Then when we grew a little bit, and then we chose at the time it was Selenium, no Playwright or Cypress were around at that time, so the choice was easy. So when we have Selenium tests, we also needed those tests to run on the Selenium grid. So that was a second standard that we infused into the process. And then further ahead, when we had security definitions already there, we created a Docker image for each one of the services. That was the base image that any API, any service that was created needed to use, where we infused security tools. So we have there the agents that do the validations, the agents that help on our team of security to look at those. For the students, that's it. For the second part, champions. So this was a little bit tricky because, first of all, we want to involve everyone, but we have a saying in Portugal that is, if everyone is responsible to give the food to a donkey, the donkey will die because everyone will think that the other is providing that food to the donkey, and the donkey actually is not being fed. So it's a topic to think that we are going to be able to involve everyone. So choose representatives of areas. And for us, it was of teams, of pillars, and not just developers, because sometimes you have tools that come from different places. They need to be able to discuss technicalities and overall architecture. So we start choosing the senior architects. For us, we were dividing into agile teams, and a group of agile teams were under a pillar, and that pillar has an architect responsible for it. So we choose those architects responsible for each one of the pillars that are really more experienced people. They have the notion of the overall architecture that we have, and they have the ability to dive in the teams or to bring the necessity of the teams to this board of champions. They also need to be decision makers. So we don't want persons with less experience that are unable to take decisions and always wanted to other persons to do so. They need between them to be able to say, yes, this is worth it to go around, or yes, we need to change the system to comply with this new standard, or we need to remove this and be more permissive. So they need to be able to do so. And foremost, and really, really important, they need to be involved and present. And this means if you have a monthly, that we're going to talk a little bit after, if you have a monthly scheduled to discuss, the champions need or have the obligatory to be there. They need to be there. If they start not going, they start failing a lot of times, the process will be lost. So we need persons that understand it also. So some of the part of not just developers I put here was senior infrastructure engineer, because we need all of the parts in there. We need the support to be there. We need developers. We need testers. We need infrastructure engineers, at least in the previous company. But make sure that you involve persons that are keen to be involved, that want to be responsible, that are decision makers, that have the experience and want to make things change. Monthly spotlight was a necessity. We don't want to just, well, first of all, the process is not created one time and now it's there for everyone to use. It needed to be adjusted. It needed to be changed or maintained as we go along. So we need to have a monthly spotlight. We define it at least once a month. The champions will gather and we'll talk about if you have any applications being trialed, how is it going, when it will be ending, do we have any in use that needs to go to on hold? I don't know, because the lifetime, the life expectancy is ending and they will provide no more support. So we need to address all of those things and understand what is the impact of those decisions. Because if you want to cease to use one tool that is in use, you need more than just saying, well, this will end day X. You need to know what are the teams that are using it. You need to define a phase out of that tool and probably find a replacement for that tool and be able to provide that information to the teams in order for them to onboard the new tools, let the other tool die, and what it means into production. If I install the new tool, and what are the impacts on our users? How are we going to do this, the switch between the tools? Is it going to be transparent for users? Do we need to have some downtime? Well, all of those questions are to be questioned there. And of course, no one likes emails nowadays, but at the time, we had that version updated and published. So all of the decisions were mirrored into the technology radar. It was pushed and online, but we also send an email for everyone in the company. I know emails, but they still the way to reach everyone. And it's still a way that I can, if I don't see that email today, in 1 month time frame, I can go to the inbox and search for it, and the information will be there. With a chat or something like that, the information I can search, it's true, but it will have so much information there that I probably lose what really matters. Then visibility. I kind of touched this a little bit into everything that we said, but visibility is valuable. So you need to have that visible to everyone. Need to update and share. So be able to have an endpoint, a link that you can share with everyone that just go there and have all the information available. And you need to share this process to everyone. And that's the email part. And those champions were also what we use a lot in testing, that is evangelists. They are also evangelists of the process that are infusing this into the entire company. And I believe I'm reaching the end of the presentation. I hope I inspired you at least to question what are the amount of tools that you have, the process to adopt those. And remember, it may not be a problem today, but it may be in the future. And at least you have this piece of information there. For my suggestion, start small, understand your company requirements, involve the right person, gather information, and well, keep fitting it. And let's stop the tooling avalanche together.
Yeah.
So I'm here for questions. I don't know if you have time.
Yeah, I think we're just on time. We started a little late, but we're just on time. So yeah, so Dorothy was here. She was putting words of wisdom here. So if anybody has any questions, please right now you can use the chat also, or you can put it in the Q&A tab. Otherwise, if it's a Friday evening and you're trying to rush outside, you can always connect to Cristiano on LinkedIn also. Our team will drop the LinkedIn profile link for Cristiano so that you can connect it later. Any questions? I'll wait for 1 or 2 more minutes. But yeah, very important topic considering the sheer magnitude of tools coming into the market, especially with AI. It's important that we have a framework of selecting the right tools and everything else. Yeah. So it looks like we're done. My team is dropping up the feedback link. Please feel free to fill the feedback form so that we can improve, Cristiano can improve, and tomorrow all of us can improve. We'll share the feedback with Cristiano also. So yeah, so that's about it for today. We can call this off. And yeah, so this is the feedback link. Just click this button. It will take you to the feedback form. Please feel free to fill the feedback. There's a question. No, Dorothy, your question didn't get posted here. Let me just check this once. No, it didn't get posted here. There are 2 comments from you, so you can put it in the chat if that's okay for you. I'll take the question, Dorothy. It didn't get posted in the Q&A tab. Yeah, sure. Please try again. Let's wait. I think Dorothy is trying to ask a question. So yeah. Yeah, let's just wait.
Yeah.
Let's close this. Continue. Got it. Dorothy, you can also use the chat if Q&A tab is not so intuitive. Okay. Yeah. Here is the question. Okay. I'll just put this on stream. This is from Dorothy, and to all of you who are here still live with us. Dorothy is one of the most senior people in the testing industry, rich experience. She has a lot of wisdom. So yeah, it's our pleasure to have her here. In a recent survey, 80% of the people were just using their tool directly. How important is it to get a level of abstraction from the tool? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I would say that the tools are probably meant to, at least when they are put into the world, to be used directly. But sometimes you may need, and by tools, I'm including not only tools, but frameworks or APIs. And when we go that route, it may need a level of abstraction, because instead of dealing directly with the tool, we may be infusing that tool into the process that we have, and to do so, we may need an abstraction level. I would say, well, depending, like everything in life, I believe it depends on how do you want to use the tool, how the tool will be integrated into your process. But I will say if you need a level of abstraction, and sometimes when you think of a level of abstraction, is more of thinking if I'm going to use that tool until the end of my life or the end of life of my product. If not, will I benefit having a level of abstraction that everyone will get used to, and then I can switch the tool beneath it and without impact my users. So it's a way of doing things. It will depend on what is your objective, what is your purpose of doing so. So my final answer is it depends, but I see value in both of the approaches. Yeah. If we have another one.
Okay, I was on mute.
No.
Sorry.
Okay. I was not listening. I think I was thinking that the problem was me.
No. So awesome one. How do we overcome some issues with respect to already established tools in an organization?
Yeah, that's we started that route. So when we started this technology radar, we had like a lot of tools, and the problem was already there. So we need to. The first thing we did was getting an overview of everything that we have. So we asked everyone and find information about all of the tools and frameworks that we have, what are the versions being used, what are the teams being used, to have an overview of what's happening now. And then we will start that process of understanding if those tools are really being used or what are the teams being used, how are they being used on our process. And this is challenging because at the time we were also defining the process, meaning that we were kind of working parallel in these two streams. So we have definition of the process and definition of what are the tools that are important to this process. So if you have this kind of problem, it will give you a lot of work and investment, but the end will be fruitful. But the first one that we did is understanding what are the tools that we have, what are they being used for, what is the purpose, and where are they being used in the process? Are they already installed in production? What they are doing in production? Do they have final versions already? Do they have a support community? All of that we put it in a table to understand all of that, and then it's just a matter of refining it, understanding, and that was really helpful because we start seeing different tools for the same purpose, and we start having those discussion of, well, does it make sense? Can some of the teams migrate to other tools so we can duplicate this one, and we can save some money on those licenses, and then make sure that we start building the process and adjusting the tools to what we wanted to do. So it's troublesome,
Got it.
but worth it at the end.
Understood. And there's one more comment slash question from Dorothy is about are you familiar with the test automation patterns wiki and have you found it useful? Is it really comment issues from you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, and with everything. I think that having information is always relevant. The way you apply that information is that will make you the expert or not, let's say, because like the testing automation patterns are, you need to be aware of those first of all to have that information, so you can clearly identify, well, oh, I'm using this pattern. Is there a way of adjusting this, or is it the better thing to do in my automation? So I advise everyone to go there, to be aware of what's out there, because like everything, you need, once you have that information, it will prevent you doing mistakes and also guide you into doing things that is more or less the better. And I will say that, well, we are kind of shifting into automation. That is not really the scope, but as is one of my passions also, I will say that what troubles the most in automation is flakiness. Flakiness is often, for me, wrongly associated to tests. But what's for in my and in here my opinion, my experience is flaky is not the problem of that. When it is because we have poor code quality and poor usage of backup. Because and that's clear. The only other impacts that can cause flaky of tests are problems in the system. And in the system, maybe the environment's not ready, it's too slow, it doesn't have the data that we need, whatever it is. But then the test is just highlighting that problem. So it's not the test is flaky, it's probably the environment. But we never listen anyone say, well, I have an application that is flaky. That doesn't happen. So why do we say that about that? But I understand the problematic.
Got it. Got it. I think we can end this here now. We're over time by 10 minutes. So, and it's Friday evening for a lot of people, Friday morning for few, and Friday afternoon for a few. So let's just give them the Friday session. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cristiano, for doing this session. You have been kind with us as always. And thank you for all of you for attending this session. And on a Friday evening, or a Friday morning, or Friday afternoon, whatever it is for you, we hope to host you back, and both Cristiano and the attendees. And we'll see everyone in a few days of time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.